I don't got anything special around me to make a funny intro with.
Oh man.
No, we'll just send it. Welcome to
it.
Youth Australia.
Welcome back to the Youth Australia, guys. So good to be here today, back again. And today we have a very, very special episode for you because we have our first guest episode.
It's so good. Let's go.
Is very, very exciting. We've been hoping to have guests on for a little bit, and we're really, really excited to have this wonderful, wonderful man of God with us today, Mr. Mark Wilton, who is, we have a bit of a history with. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Wilton is a teacher, and he was actually our teacher at school a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. So yeah.
Good to be here, guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you on.
Good to promise I won't break anyone's arm or leg this time. How's that?
Yeah. We do have a history.
We do.
Last time I actually had Mr. Mark Wilton as a teacher was for a special class where we had electric bikes up in the bush at the back of the school. Yeah. And I managed to not just crash, but crash really bad on one of these bikes. Yeah. So bad that I broke my wrist and had to have 3 operations on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I don't think I'll actually show that on camera because I don't know about YouTube policies and everything about scarring. But
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It's on the wrist, so it's not a very good spot either. But yeah, it was a good time.
It was, yeah.
Also broke his helmet. So
that was the least of the worries. It was more about you. Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a lot of history with Mr. Wilton, but one of the things that I most remember about my time sort of spent at school with him as my pastoral care teacher, and the wisdom and knowledge that he brought as he sort of guided us young men in our spiritual journey through those years was absolutely amazing, and I'm very, very grateful for that. The reason why we asked you onto the podcast this week is a couple of months ago, we heard your story at church. You spoke on your story of growing up in a Christian family, losing your faith through university, and then eventually regaining your faith, and this sort of steps that you took along that way. And we thought, oh, this is absolutely brilliant. And I think something that is quite applicable for some of our youth listeners who might be at that stage of going, oh, I'm not sure what I think about all this Christian stuff. You know, my parents have told me things. I've had a certain faith, but I don't know really where I sit with this myself. So yeah, if you would like to share your story on that, we'd love to listen to it.
Yeah. I'll get right into it. I was obviously born like normal kids into a family that broke apart when I was 4, and my dad was a soldier and mum was a nurse, and we moved from South Australia where we were living. My mum and dad split. Mum, my sister and I moved from South Australia over to Belmont, and my mum had some major surgery that was going on, some brain surgery, and so we lived with my grandparents for about 3 years. And so my grandfather was my father figure, and it was pretty cool. It was really, really a good life. But growing up in rough areas and commission areas and so on, I had to really sort of, I experienced some pretty bad stuff. Some pretty awful gear, a lot of fights. I was a bigger kid as well growing up, and I had some anger issues. Even though I was a quieter kid, I really loved to just fight. And yeah, it was really quite incredible. Went through school, loved school, absolutely loved school. And my mum, what a gem she was. She, and still is, she brought me up to really respect people in authority. So I loved my teachers, enjoyed my school. And at about 15 actually, I got into cycling, into bike racing. And I think I don't know if it's my genetics, my ancestry, or maybe my father's background and stuff that he put into me in the first 4 years of my life. But I loved to suffer, absolutely loved putting myself through pain. And on a bike, to be a good bike racer and good rider, you've got to be able to really turn this off and just let your legs do it and be able to cope with the pain. And as a matter of fact, I love that. I really like the suffering aspect of it, and love to go fast on two wheels. So got into motorbikes as well, and kind of like I think when when your family's split, you do some pretty heavy thinking, and the bike was a great place for me to get out on the road and just think, have plenty of headspace. I trained with a training partner, Trent, and he and I'd yak, but also had plenty of Ks by myself, and I'd just be thinking about the purpose of life and what it was all about and stuff like that. Did science at school, loved biology and chemistry, and I just had a brilliant biology teacher. She put a real passion into it for me, and so ended up having a choice to make. A really quick choice. I chose to do science to get into university, and it was like a 5-minute decision at school just to choose to do that. It was either that or engineering or architecture or any of those sorts of things. Got into science, and it was really, really interesting. About a month into the science course that I was doing at Newcastle University, I had some mates prior to that in the holidays that had sort of invited me around to go to youth group, and there's some pretty wild fellas. One of them, Justin, a good buddy of mine, was just a pretty heavy drinker and partier, and we had actually nearly fought about a year before, been fisticuffs. So I'd done a lot of martial arts. He'd done a lot of weights, and we were having this pillow fight at this camp, and we just been to fisticuffs. Well, anyway, this guy was an angry fella, but a great fella too. And I had some anger issues, and anyway, I saw him at youth group and thought, wow, this guy's changed. He's changed incredibly. And the blokes that were there at the youth group were really, really nice, genuine fellas. And I was into heavy metal. For cycling, I used to get myself going in sprints. I used to really work myself up to some Slayer and all sorts of heavy music, and he was into that, and all these guys were into it. And so I just found a sort of a family. It was really, really cool, and things were pretty good for about 2 years. I got into reading my Bible. I'd never experienced the Bible before. I'd gotten into a relationship with the Lord, and I never had experienced any of that sort of stuff ever. Cycling took a back seat because instead of spending 4 hours suffering on a bike, I realised that there was more important things in life than riding a bike for 4 hours a day, and having the train cycle, the recover cycle, and eat as much as you can, sleep, and then train, and that cycle was just going on. You'd know what it's like with the ballet, mate. And so I just saw that, man, I had a purpose. I had an absolutely incredible purpose in life, and I'd been made to love the Lord, to love people, and be in a relationship with him and with people. And I just thought that was remarkable. It was amazing. And that was pretty cool. Traveled along pretty well for a while. But in my 3rd year of uni, I had a professor. I actually chose to do a course called Religious Studies, and I chose it because I had an arrogance about me. I chose it to try and convert this guy, this professor of mine. And Terry Lovett, he was a great professor, great bloke, but he put in my head some seeds of doubt, a lot of questions that I'd never really thought about because I hadn't really thought much about Old New Testament, all that sort of gear. I'd only read it. A lot of his questions I just couldn't get answers for, and I started to really, really doubt my faith. And science also, doing biology, doing phys, chem, bio, all that sort of gear, but particularly bio, really starts to undermine an idea that there's a God who actually created everything, is in control of everything. Because from the perspective of biology, we're a cosmic accident. We're really the sum of our DNA, and we're a bundle of cells, bunch of cells that lives, has a start, exists, and then dies and becomes nutrients for some other organism. And so with that in mind, and getting that 16 hours a week, getting indoctrinated with that sort of mindset, and with the questions and doubts that I was being fed through this professor of religious studies, this elective that I chose to do, I just started to really doubt what I'd believed for 2 years. And I jump on my motorbike and, in an afternoon and just ride and just be thinking about the purpose of life. And I just came to the conclusion that there was no God and that I didn't have a purpose in life, a true purpose in life. And now a lot of atheists are nice people. They're really, really nice people. And I was a nice fella, but I could see the whole baggage that I had, even before I became a Christian. But the baggage that our society had was just based on a sort of a Christian worldview that our society had left. And as an atheist, I just thought, wow, okay, if there's no God, then there's no purpose in life apart from live, reproduce fertile offspring, and die. So ultimately, compost, chemicals, nutrients for some other organism, that's it. There's no true love. Love is just it's biology, chemistry. And yeah, I didn't see for me at the time that there was ever going to be a bond that would hold me together with someone else. I was ready to just either go live in Nimbin and be stoned out of my brain for the rest of my life so I didn't have to think about the big heavy questions. Or, because I have an ability to be quite brutal on myself physically in the sense of with the training that I'd done. And my father, being a soldier, he had quite a hardness to him. I could very easily go towards that sort of hard thing, and I could very easily see that I wasn't going to be a peaceful atheist. I could be quite a very dangerous atheist. I wasn't going to be the atheist that we mostly see on YouTube. I was going to be more I will control things and I'll get what I want kind of thing, and do it with whatever it takes kind of thing. So, and that's not very nice. I mean, you guys see me as probably as a nice teacher, and I'm a nicer fella, thankfully, because of God, because I've gotten back in a relationship with him. But for me at the time, it was actually quite dangerous, very, very dangerous for me physically. I think dangerous for society potentially, because I was super keen to join at the time thinking I might just join, the Hell's Angels or Life and Death at the time were pretty big, a local outlaw bike gang in the Belmont region and so on. One of those, and there'd be a band of brothers there that I could work alongside and live the life that we wanted to live, be it the drugs, the sex, the grog, whatever it is, the music. I just thought, nah, that'll do me. And I could live a lawless life. I didn't have to live with the Christian baggage of rules and all that sort of stuff that our society lives by. So I wasn't the peaceful atheist that we mostly see. I was more of the angry, frustrated, very scary type bloke. So that was where I was coming from with that.
Awesome.
Anything you want to say?
Awesome. No, it's interesting to sort of track the way that story happened and how those little seeds of doubt planted can really quickly grow and spread. And sometimes, I mean, who knows if even his information was entirely correct or not, but it was enough to grab that little seed of maybe a seed of doubt that was already there, and it just sort of amplified it and grabbed it, and then you took it and went on from that. So obviously you're not a biker. You're not a bikie. I don't see any patches on you at the moment.
No.
You're not a militant atheist anymore. What happened to bring you into the awesome teacher that you are today?
Yeah. So I thought to myself, right, okay, being a biologist and being, into writing and things like that earlier on, I was into being healthy. And I knew that, drugs just weren't going to be good for my body. And I didn't really like the area of Nimbin anyway. And the biker stuff, I love riding bikes. I wasn't into Harleys. I was into Jap stuff, Japanese bikes that are fast and handle well and brake well and all those sorts of things. Just wanted to go fast, and so, but the big thing was I knew there were probably going to be answers. And And it was just a matter of time and a matter of me reading and really researching and asking the right questions. So, you know, I had the usual doubts. Like, I mean, as a scientist, how could you have a virgin birth? As a scientist, how can stuff be created out of nothing? As a scientist, evolution rules. The idea of evolution is it. And so how does that fit into Genesis? Or how does Genesis fit into that theory? But also had some doubts about, a heap of doubts about miracles. Yeah. But having said that, those 2 years of being a Christian and really getting to know this Jesus bloke, man, I tell you, when I was an atheist and thinking about the things, I just had so much good teaching about this Jesus fella. And I had never experienced anyone like him, in the sense that had never read anything. His parables were incredible. You know, the actual idea that someone would die for their enemies was just like, oh man, brain snap. It's just brain blowing. It's just, it blew me away. It really blew me away. So during that time of really questioning and not believing at all, there was always that niggling little idea that, how does this Jesus fella stick in, or how does he fit in with this? Because there's no one like him in history. And so I read a lot of history. I didn't do much uni work in my last year. I got reasonably good marks, which was incredible. But I read way beyond the science course that I was doing. I read a lot of scientific journals. Really got into journal articles. I started to become a skeptic of evolution theory, and for some people that's not very popular. But I started to become a skeptic of evolution theory as well. And our course, we weren't taught any of the problems or issues with evolution theory. So that was one thing that had really drawn me away from the Bible. But the biggest things were getting answers for the doubts that I had about Old and New Testament being inspired by God. I had some really serious doubts about that. And I didn't want to read any Christian material because I thought Christians were biased and all sorts of things. So I got in and read a whole heap of secular material on that, and was blown away by the historical accounts, the accuracy of the Old and New Testament in so many areas. Not all areas, because a lot of things haven't been discovered that are mentioned in the Old Testament and New Testament. But in areas of archaeology, I was blown away by the evidence to support the places mentioned, the names. Yeah, that really, you know, really, it was incredible. And I thought, okay, so if something's fake, how can it be so archaeologically accurate, historically accurate? Those two things, normally, stories aren't made up with those historical accuracies as well. And then I looked at I went in and delved a little bit more into evidences for Old Testament, New Testament being inspired by God. So being a scientist, I was really quite interested in the law, for instance, in the Old Testament law. And there's so many scientific, with so many areas of science you can delve into there. It just blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And so I was looking at that sort of stuff and was quite blown away. I think the big thing though was the fact of the Gospels being so so impacting of society and impacting of my life. I was just blown away at this Jesus fella and thinking, I can't get him out of my head. Now, as an atheist, I wasn't into, you know, like, I didn't want to get into the whole feelings and all that sort of stuff. I wanted cold, hard facts. And so I was just blown away at the historical record, the accuracy of that. I was blown away at the whole story, all the way through from Old Testament, from Genesis, right the way through to Revelation. I started to read the Bible not as a book, as a devotional. I read it as a history book or as a book to try and critique it. And I started to read through it, and I was just blown away at how everything fitted together. It was this flow right the way through. Now, obviously, had to answer questions about, you know, authorship. You know, look at how is it that Peter, for instance, could write this, or Paul could write this and still be inspired by God? I had to really get in and do some heavy duty reading. Now, about 8 months into it, I discovered that I can actually read some Christian authors' books. And I started to read some really, really heavy-duty books on theology and Bible college level books on, I don't want to use terms that I find a bit boring, but on books that actually help to see that the inspiration of scriptures was a legitimate thing. Then I started to see, I discovered a bloke called John Smith, and I discovered C.S. Lewis. I discovered L'Abri, a place called L'Abri, and the people there. And I discovered that there were people that were thinkers that had actually been through what I'd been through and had come through it. And I started to read their information, their books, and watch videos too. There's a guy called Francis Schaeffer who's not alive anymore, absolute legend, real thinker of the 80s and 90s. I read through his works and could see, I could see others that had gone through the same thing and how they'd come through. And so it was the help of those sorts of people. I didn't actually, get any help from friends at the time because, I didn't want my questions and doubts to become their questions and doubts. My mum and my stepdad, who I love and who is my dad, from my perspective now, my stepdad had started to go to church. And as much as I disagreed with a lot of what was going on at the time as an atheist, I saw so much happiness in his life and I didn't want him to lose that. I saw so much purpose. And my mum, and by the way, I mean, they weren't married until I was 25. My mum and him had lived together for about 17 years. And my mum's experience with my dad was so unsettling for her that it took 17 years of her and my stepdad being together before she could actually trust enough to be able to go, okay, I'm going to get married. It was such a big experience for her. The ending of her marriage and all the stuff that went on, it was quite brutal at times. And so, I didn't want to impact her. I didn't want to impact my stepdad. I loved him heaps. And look, they saw what I was going through, but I didn't want to wreck it for them. So so it was quite an interesting experience. Now I came through it, and I was blown away. Absolutely blown away by the difference. My life without God was dangerous, dead set dangerous to me, to society. Now I'm not sure you guys would have read a bit about this, but Martin Bryant killed a lot of people in a really awful thing that he did down in Tasmania. But as an atheist, I could well have done something like that. I possibly could have gone that way, and now I look at it and go, wow, okay, I could never see myself hurting people in that way at all, ever. But in that time, back then, I saw people, who cares? I mean, people kill an ant, kill a human, what's the difference? There's a little bit more genetic information, but that is really the major difference. A little bit of time evolution-wise in the evolutionary line, but that's the difference. No real difference. And so that was where I was at. But as a Christian bloke, as a Christian man afterwards, man, people have value. There's reason why we go and rescue people. There's reasons why soldiers, for instance, in Afghanistan at the moment, soldiers are risking their life because the people they're rescuing are important. They're not ants. They're not DNA. People have value, and the reason why they have value is because God loves every person, gives us value, and we value people because of His valuing us. Without God, you don't have that. Without God, there's no reason, like Martin Luther King, for instance, to really fight the battles for people, to fight against racism. Who cares if there's racism? Honestly, who cares if we're just bundles of DNA, cells and DNA? There's no real reason why you would want to fight that if they're all going to die anyway, and there's no purpose to the universe. Who cares about people being displaced from their homes? Who cares about people who are treated awfully? All those sorts of things. Ultimately, there's no purpose to life. The opposite is that there is a purpose, and the reason why we care and help is because God loves us, even though we were His enemy. He's now made us His children. He's adopted us, and we have we have his love in us, and we want to do the right thing by him. We want to love him just because we just have experienced his love and his generosity and his forgiveness and all those things that I didn't have as an atheist. I've experienced it. And so, it's just, the difference is incredible. The difference is amazing. And I just think Jesus is the most amazing human who has ever walked on the earth. And I'm just blown away that as a son of God, that he would put himself in a situation to die for me, the filthy sinner that I am, and that he loves me and has a purpose for me. And you know what? I've got 3 kids, 3 amazing kids, and my, gorgeous wife, Anne, that I would not have had if I didn't come back to the Lord. And who knows where my life would be? I'd possibly be dead. If I wasn't, I'd be possibly in the news, in prison. I don't know. I've been in the news. I don't know. Got no idea. But I know that I can make a difference, and I get to now, really influence young men like yourselves, young ladies and men like yourselves. And as a teacher, it's interesting. If every day I got up in the morning, went to school, taught students who I thought were going to die at 72, and all the information, knowledge, whatever I taught them would just go, that would be such a waste of an existence. But the opposite, I get to get up and actually really impact students for an incredible eternity, and to show love for them instead of hatred, to show care instead of who cares, to really, really benefit, hopefully, benefit their life as much as I can. And, with all of our foibles and faults and all those sorts of things, we can at least sometimes in our life really benefit and bless people instead of being a curse to people, instead of being that real antagonistic, yucky person that I could have been. And, I absolutely love that, and love the impact that I can be as a dad and as a hubby, and we're on this learning curve. We're always learning and stuffing up, sinning, but the Lord is just so graceful and gracious to us in forgiving us and, wiping us clean. He's already done that, but just, helping us to be the better men and women that we can be for him.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh. Yeah.
Blown away by that story. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for the influence that you've had on our lives.
Definitely.
Hey, it goes both ways. I get to be influenced by you fellas too.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, it was so good to hear you talk again as well. Like, I haven't been at school for 2 years now, over 2 years.
Yeah.
And hearing that just brings me back to, Thursdays, chapel days, when you'd get up and talk sometimes. So good to have that back.
Yeah.
Such a good time. I had a question for you. Do you experience doubts?
Oh yeah, I do. It's interesting. The last 2 nights, not tonight, but last night before, we've been reading through Joshua, and Joshua chapters 8, 9, 10 with the family. This is just after dinner, and I tell you, there's some brutality there, incredible brutality there, and it's just incredible. They go in and take Jericho, and they go in and take Ai, and there's other kings that come against them, and it's just like, go into the towns and don't leave anyone alive. Men, women, children, animals, all those sorts of things. Now, as a skeptic, years ago, I looked at those verses and thought, man, that's not a God of love. This Jesus who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. If that's him, then he's a different bloke from the New Testament. And, so we're reading through this the last 2 nights, and, there are, like, part of me, and I think part of everyone, we read those sorts of things in the context of our society, and we think, wow, that is pretty darn brutal. How can God, instruct and get the children of Israel to go in and actually fight those battles? How mentally devastated would those Israelites have been, having hacked people with knives, swords, whatever, being close hand-to-hand contact and choking people to death until they've got no air left, and all those sorts of things. And you think, how can God actually, do that? And so in those sorts of areas, I do have, some doubts. Not in that particular case, I've read through enough information and looked at it from all perspectives to have some good solid answers for that, and for slavery, that the Bible, you know, for some people they see that it endorses and so on. I've read enough information on those sorts of things that when I have a question, I go, oh yeah, okay, I've dealt with that question. Here's the answer. Here's the response that I need. But yeah, I do have doubts. Like for instance, at the moment with coronavirus, you know, impacting society and lockdowns and all those sorts of things. But my doubts aren't. They're more of, Lord, I'll just give this over to you. I don't have the answers in this thing for my kids. I just completely give and trust everything to you, that you've got this under control. But yeah, there are times where I might be, for instance, in a situation where someone is hurt and I can't do anything, and I can pray, but not knowing the way God's going to deal with it, and I, can have questions about what he's going to do, or even if he is acting. And I think that's a normal human thing to do. I actually don't think that the Lord is against us for doubting. If you look at Psalms, it's full of doubting people. Ecclesiastes is a book for doubters. You've got Thomas, a major doubter that's talked about in the Old Testament, New Testament. And, it's interesting is Jesus actually gets him to question it, and, requires him to question at times. I think sometimes doubt's given a bad rap. I think doubt's actually one of the best things that we can have in some cases, because it makes us get off our backsides, do some research, and actually think through things really at a deep level. And it can also get us to trust in the Lord for those things we'll never have an answer for, to really go, okay, Lord, I've not got an answer for this, but I've seen you in so many other areas be true to your word. And I've seen you in so many other areas that you could be trusted, or, that my questions have been answered. I reckon there's going to be some answers there. I've got a few areas of the Bible that I still go, hang on, that's pretty interesting. There's a few, seems like a few inconsistencies. There's 2 of them that I haven't gotten good answers for at the moment. But you know what? I'm really not worried by those, because I've had hundreds of those that I've gotten answers for. And it took a lot of reading, a lot of research. That was one of the big things that I had were problems with the Old New Testament, where I just saw numbers wrong and all sorts of different things. So those 2 don't worry me too much, because I know that ultimately there's stuff that we haven't studied enough, that we don't know enough about, to be able to work out that supposed inconsistency. Yeah.
Fantastic.
How's that?
Awesome.
It was really good, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, on this podcast, our main audience is youth, so sort of younger people from 13 to 18, that sort of age. And I know from my own experience, and I'm sure Levi can speak to this as well, that age is a time of a lot of questioning, a lot of changes in your life. A lot of changes in the way that you relate to faith oftentimes, because for a lot of people who grow up in Christian families, their faith is very much related to their family and to that experience of church. And a lot of people start experiencing doubt at that age as they start to sort of leave their family, become less influenced by that, have to sort of work out their faith themselves. Obviously, you've gone through an incredible journey through that, and there are a lot of people that are probably at sort of a similar point in the road. What advice would you have for young people who are having those same thoughts, having those same questions and doubts?
Yeah, I think be careful what you listen to and watch and so on. I regularly, probably every second day, I'm listening to Cosmic Skeptic, or all sorts of different guys, Matt Dillahunty, and watching different watching YouTube videos and so on. And it's really interesting. When I was going through my skeptical time, there was none of that at all. I'd read Dawkins' work. I read all of his. I had to study it at university, so I was exposed to atheistic views. But there's a lot more of it out there now. And the thing is that it's very, very simple, very easy to watch all these things and go, wow, there's legitimate concerns there. And they are legitimate concerns that these atheists, put out there. But it's quite simple as well to just watch their stuff and go, okay, that's it, Christianity gone. You need, those fellas and girls, if they're watching these sorts of things, need to know there's another side, and actually do the deep research.
Mm.
The fellas on YouTube that do these presentations, man, they're polished. They're so good at what they do. They're very, very smart, but they've also got hurts, biases, and all sorts of things that you don't know about from the history, and also just in their thinking. And so I think the biggest thing is you need to get a balanced view. So you need to make sure you're looking at the Christian experts that are on there too. So find those, and don't just believe what Matt Dillahunty or anyone else says about them. Really dig in, and look at the comments you'll see for some of these YouTube clips. You'll see all sorts of negative comments, but they're not comments that are really quite thoughtful or with evidence to support the comments so much. So be careful, but I think the biggest thing too is who you surround yourself with is such an important thing. And as a young fella, I didn't choose the wrong crowd, even though I lived in a commission area. I was a household kid, could have hung out with some pretty wild bunch of people, or wild bunches of people. I pulled away from that, got into the cycling scene, and was protected a little bit from that sort of stuff, and that kind of, I guess, molded who I was. I think be careful who you hang out with. Just make sure that you're around people that really spur you on, that are real sails for you, not anchors that'll pull you back and hold you back. Be thinking about the people you're hanging around with. Be thinking about the person you want to become, and have some goals. It's interesting. We are born to worship. If we don't worship God, we worship soccer players, footy players, whoever it is, academics and so on. It's just built in us. It's part of us. People say, "Oh, why does God want worship?" Well, it's not because he needs it. It's because we're wired up to really value and to revere people and to look up to people. But we sometimes do that at the expense of God, and that's not so good for us, because people fail us. They don't have the big picture. They don't have all the information out there, and so God does have that. So be careful who your heroes are, who you look up to, who you hang out with, but find good people that are really doing well in life. And I don't mean with monetary stuff and things like that, but people who have character, incredible character. And look at those, because they're the people that are really they've got runs on the board, that know how to do this pretty well, and have got the experience that you can learn from. And another little last thing to finish with is respect for people who are older than you is such a big thing. It's something that's disappearing though, it seems. But I think being able to listen, cutting back on your social media, which is very addictive. I know that personally, because it is. Our chemistry is so wired up to be wanting that hit, that comment from Facebook or whatever it is that you're looking at, whatever. To maybe stick clear of those sorts of things and be really people-centered. To be, instead of getting the hits of endorphins that we feel like we need, the drug, the brain drug that makes us feel good, be it from alcohol, it gives us that, or whatever it is, really get away from technology and be more people-centered. It's so good for you. You can learn so much from oldies, and I'm talking like 80-year-olds, people that are older that have been there, or 40-year-olds or 30-year-olds or whatever. Really spend time with those people, be it online or in person when this lockdown stops, because you can benefit so much from them and their wisdom and also the love. And I think honour your mum and dad. Love your mum and dad. That's my dad, my real dad, man, I tell you, he was a piece of work. But I think the big thing for me is that I wanted his love and wanted his acceptance so much as a young fella. And I didn't really get that until I was about 37, maybe 40. And I think that relationship with our parents is such an important thing. And sometimes that's not easy. I know personally how that's not easy. It can be very, very hard. But I think really, trying to develop those relationships with your mum and dad and family, and because they're the people that love you and really, really do love you. When it really hits the road, that it's bad in life, they're the people who are going to be there for you, really. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So good, yeah. And sorry, you go, Joel. You go.
I was just going to say, like, on your last point, it seems to me that the great arrogance of of our time and of our generation is the idea that we know more than people who have gone before, and the inability to take advice and learn the lessons of the past, I think is a big challenge for our generation going forward.
Definitely,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I like the point you made about your like what friend groups you pick, because during that age, you know, that 13 plus, your friends heavily influence what you're saying or what you're believing as well. Sorry. And yeah, I just really want to emphasize that point, that is the truth. Your friends will help you decide your future.
Yeah. Hey, you know what though? What's amazing is I've learned so much from people, young fellas and whatever, from my first year of teaching back when I was 22, 23, till now. I learn daily from the kids that I teach, the students that I teach, and I love that. And I think that's the thing. Be a learner. Maintain your real desire to learn and to learn from people, not just from books, but from people. And I think you can really benefit from people and sitting down and, I'm at the moment just thinking about some of my Year 9 students who I'm missing because I'm not teaching them, in person. And, I just love their natures, their personalities and the fun people that they are. But also what they teach me is just incredible. And I think, young people, this planet's just been really stuffed up by older generations who have tried to do the best they can and try to do the right thing. But, there's lots of, some pretty awesome people there that have got great ideas for making the place better too. So I think it's both ways. You've got to listen to both and respect your elders, but also respect people that are younger than you as well, because they've got some wisdom there as well and some learning that older people might not have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, fellas.
We really, really appreciate it. You've been such a great first guest, and we really appreciate your wisdom, and we hope that that our audience does as well. Thank you everyone who joined in to listen. We really appreciate you coming in every week, and hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to ask us questions or everything, if you've got any questions about this episode, you can comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, or send us a link. The links will be below whatever it is on whatever platform you're listening to.
Yeah, so it's all going to be below. Instagram's going to be linked below. Our Discord, ask questions there. If you have questions specifically for Mark, we will pass them on and he might answer them, and then we'll get back to you that way.
Yeah,
that's if you want. Yep. If not, we're happy to answer ourselves.
100%. Mark, would you be happy to lead us in a prayer to finish off?
Yeah, that's good, guys. Yeah, let's go. Lord, I thank you for your heart for us. I thank you for the love that you have for us every day. Lord, you see us in our sinful ways, and you've cleansed us. But even as enemies of you at one stage, you just have thoughts for us, plans for us, for the betterment of us, Lord. Lord, I thank you that you love us. Lord, I thank you that you forgive us. Lord, I thank you that you run for us and look for us and hunt us down out of love, Lord. I just ask that you use these two fellas and Lord, really use the information that I've said tonight maybe to inspire someone, Lord. But Lord, I really want to thank you for who you are in your name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us this week, and we will see you next week. All right.
Catch you later.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.